बोल दो यार.
When reaching into emerging markets, understanding the customer diversity and translating it to an effective segmentation scheme will be critical to designing efficient supply chain operations. This conference aims to provide a platform to bring together research scholars and industry experts in the field of supply chain management, operations, and logistics with particular focus on emerging markets. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome on stage our esteemed guests, Mr. Harry Lagarde, Vice President Corporate Projects, South and Southeast Asia, Toll Global Logistics. CEO Logistics Executive. Dr. H. Chaturvedi, Director BIMTECH. Conference co-chairs Dr. C.S. Lalwani, Emeritus Professor, Hull University, UK, and Professor Rajiv Sharma, Professor, Supply Chain and Logistics Management at BIMTECH. And Program Co-Chair Dr. Ashish Dwivedi, Deputy Director, Center for System Studies at University of Hull. A warm welcome to all of you. With a master's degree in commerce and doctorate in business management from Agra University, Dr. H. Chaturvedi has more than 35 years of experience in teaching, research and administration. As a former director with the All India Council for Technical Education, a statutory body under the Ministry of HRD, Government of India, he has been associated with the formulation of policies, planning, regulation and control of management education, as well as other disciplines under technical education. Dr. Chaturvedi is a founder member and the alternate president of Education Promotion Society for India, a national platform for eminent educationists, education service providers, and edu-entrepreneurs. He is also the president of the Alumni Association of Agra University and Ranganathan Society for Social Welfare and Library Development, Uttar Pradesh. It is my pleasant duty to call upon Dr. H. Chaturvedi to please deliver the welcome address.
Respected Dr. C.S. Lalwani, Mr. Harry Lagarde, Mr. Kimball Winter, delegates to the summit, honored guests, distinguished speakers, members of the media, faculty and students, it gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all to the International Conference on Supply Chain and Logistics Management on the theme Global Supply Chains and Emerging Markets. I am delighted to see the response to this theme, which was chosen after much deliberation. I remember almost 1 year in advance, the idea of this conference was finalized by some of the faculty members of BIMTECH with Professor Lalwani and Professor Dwivedi from the University of Hull, UK. This conference endeavors to provide a forum for all stakeholders, and especially those involved with various aspects of supply chain and logistics, to discuss issues of contemporary significance. Supply chain and logistics management has emerged as a recurrent theme demanding attention of all enterprises and industries, not merely as a fact to be paid lip service to, but as a necessary condition for creating value. In today's highly competitive global marketplace, the pressure on organizations to find new ways to create and deliver value to customers grows ever stronger. At the same time, market maturity combined with new sources of global competition has led to overcapacity in many industries, leading to an inevitable pressure on price. It is evident this backdrop that the discipline and philosophy of logistics and supply chain management has moved to the center stage over the last 2 decades. The concept of integration within the business and between businesses is not new, but the acceptance of its validity by managers is. There has been growing recognition that it is through logistics and supply chain management that the twin goals of cost reduction and service enhancement can be achieved. Better management of the pipeline means that customers are served more effectively, and yet the cost of providing that service are reduced. It is in this context we believe the education and practice of supply chain and logistics management is extremely relevant and opportune for the emerging economies of the world, and especially India, which faces formidable challenges of poor infrastructure, cultural and regulatory barriers, high level of uncertainties, and the sudden proliferation of global market opportunities. Building the core competency of supply chain management is essential for the Indian economy to achieve the status of the third largest economy in a few decades. As we know, we are living in the age of information, so the organizational and productivity models keep on improving at a brisk pace. Supply chain and logistics management is one such model whose concept is based on coordination, collaboration, communication, conflict resolution, removal or reduction of uncertainty, optimization, and most importantly, virtual integration of business partners to achieve best levels of productivity, agility, optimizing cost and revenues, surely not to forget about extraordinary returns to investors. We are very fortunate to obtain the consent of a galaxy of speakers who would be the envy of any forum that could gather to discuss the nuances of supply chain and logistics management. I could meet some of the participants who have come from UK, from Australia, from Singapore, and of course from some of the leading universities of India. We have international delegates, academic entrepreneurs, senior government officers, media representatives, and legends in the field of supply chain and logistics to share their wisdom with us. We also have a heartwarming response from the audience gathered here today who have so generously taken out time from their busy schedules to attend the summit. The variety among delegates gathered here today also gives a special flavor to the summit. We have social entrepreneurs, academics, corporate executives, both from the private and public sectors, and people from various other walks of life gathered here today. We also have a fair sprinkling of students eager to learn and take their place in tomorrow's world as responsible corporate citizens. And I remember that the human rights issues are becoming very important in supply chain management. The large turnout at the conference underlines the importance of the field of supply chain management and logistics. I would urge all of you to participate in the sessions and interact with speakers and with other delegates to take maximum benefit from the conference and thus contribute to its success. More importantly, it is our hope that the sessions provide you with ample food for thought, and the takeaways from the conference, including the book to be published compiling all the research papers being present, it will compensate for the precious hours you have spent away from your work on these 2 days. Once again, I extend a very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure to invite conference co-chair Dr. C.S. Lalwani to share a brief on this conference. Dr. Lalwani is Emeritus Professor at the University of Hull. Prior to joining the University of Hull, he was with Cardiff Business School at Cardiff University and was responsible for doctoral research in logistics, operations and supply chain management. He holds a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering and a master's in control systems and another master's in systems engineering. He obtained his PhD from the University of Wales in 1978 based on his research on the dynamic modeling of commodity flow systems. Over to you, sir, for the theme address.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Actually, it made me to think. 1978, my PhD. As time has just flown by, so makes you wonder. I mean, in those days, there was nothing like supply chain management. Logistics was just taking shape in terms of the transport and trucks and ships. I would like to welcome you all as the co-chair of this conference from University of Hull and also from BIMTECH, because we have been working very closely for nearly a year, as the director actually mentioned. I can't say any more in terms of the participation, as director actually mentioned. As excellent participation from industry and also from academia coming together in this field of supply chain, which actually requires that. Without that, it's almost impossible to make any progress in this particular field. I'll just spend 5 minutes or so to give you the background, why actually we thought it's a good idea to have this particular conference. It goes back to actually 2004 when we conducted a workshop actually at IIM in Bangalore, which was on looking at what are the issues and challenges for next generation supply chains. And we then repeated that particular workshop in a number of countries, in UK, in Turkey, in Thailand, also in China, and a kind of picture emerged that these are the emerging economies and emerging markets actually which are going to dominate the scene of global supply chain. So let's see specifically what are the issues and challenges in that particular area. I'd like to share this particular diagram which came out of that particular series of workshops, which just tries to sort of list what aspects the delegates from industry and from academia came out with that these are the issues to actually look at. So you could see that we have in the center we have supply chain management, supply chain barriers and issues and next generation aspects, and also we added things from China. And if you look at the first circle actually there, then you see some of the important areas, and in that you have go actually on the bottom left in terms of is the pointer there? If you look at this is the center part, and then you have transport. So it suggests that transport has a sort of a serious thing in supply chains, and especially in emerging markets. This raises number of issues, which includes the infrastructure, which includes synchronizing transport in supply chain, integrating transport in supply chain. Then we also have the environmental and the social issues, which are becoming quite dominant. Emerging markets have the series of suppliers who have to comply with the requirements from the outsourcees, like in the Western world or elsewhere, and therefore environmental issues are quite important. Then we have kind of the skills, as you could see in that particular box there, the skills. This actually came out as quite dominating in that particular output from the workshops, because say China, it was realized straight away that age group is such that the skill shortage is going to occur very soon, and it's happening now. Same I think we have in India, and same we have in Brazil, and same we have in other BRIC countries and also the other emerging markets. So this issue is so important to address, and that has stayed on with us to look at quite closely. Then we also have the new technology, ICT, all the compatibility. We have the cost management. We still struggle to work out the total cost of supply chains and who actually bears these costs in the partnerships, in the relationships, the muscle powers in partnerships. And we also have the additional bit, which came out in China, which is the role of government. And you can see that in that bit. And I think it's also important in India, because government actually plays quite an important role in infrastructure development, in subsidies, and also in sort of facilitating the development. So this idea was picked up, and we discussed about a year back at BIMTECH with Dr. Chaturvedi, with Rajiv Sharma, with Dr. Rahul Singh in BIMTECH, and also other colleagues also in Hull, Dr. Ashish Dwivedi. And we thought that it's time to sort of look at what industry thinks here in India, and how academia actually can bring out the best practice from elsewhere, and then bring them together to sort of come out and see what can be actually developed in relation to giving the competitive advantage to the industry, so that people are prepared for whatever challenges are here now and are going to come up in next 5 to 10 years. And I'm glad to see that the papers actually we have received for presentation, the industry panels we have this afternoon are all focused on that particular angle and actually address some of these issues raised there. In terms of the outputs we are looking for, of course, we sort of look forward to the discussion in these sessions and all the output in terms of the suggestions how these issues, challenges can be addressed, but also for the academics. Actually, it's so important to publish their research. I, being the editor-in-chief of one of the logistics journal, the International Journal of Logistics Management, which is published by Emerald, as 26 years old, have promised to take some papers for peer review coming out of this conference. As Director mentioned, there will be a book on the selected papers from the conference, and also there will be some other output in terms of which reflects on the feedback from particular technical sessions and industry panels. Once again, I thank all the delegates here from overseas. We have people from Australia, UK, Thailand, Ireland, Taiwan, USA, Czech Republic, Malaya, and number of other countries. And also we have the delegates from industry, both from UK, from here, from India and outside, and excellent universities from India. So on behalf of University of Hull, myself and Dr. Dwivedi welcome you all and wish you a very productive sessions today and tomorrow. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, sir. Our guest of honor, Mr. Harry Lagarde, is currently Vice President Corporate Projects, South and Southeast Asia of Toll Global Logistics, a global logistics conglomerate. Before that, he worked at Gati, starting as a coach for leaders to being on the board as an independent director, and later on taking on an executive director role. Before that, he was President Supply Chain at Brightstar Incorporated in Miami for a year. Prior to Brightstar, he was Director Logistics of Nokia Asia Pacific. With a career spanning over 25 years, Mr. Lagarde is an astute business leader who has successfully headed supply chain functions, manufacturing, sales, business development, and general management portfolios across a variety of industry verticals. He has not only managed large-scale operations, but has also designed and developed world-class solutions which have been published as global case studies due to the nature of complexity of its design and delivery. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Harry Lagarde to address this august gathering.
Thank you. Dr. Chaturvedi, Dr. Lalwani, my friend Kimball, Rajiv, and of course Ashish. Eminent professors from various faculties, students, industry leaders from the supply chain, good morning. I think the first thing I would like to say is, you don't know the status of my legs behind this podium. They are shaking. The reason for that is I am totally scared. I am speaking in front of such eminent leaders and thought leaders in supply chain, in other various faculties. And for a guy who has never been to an university, this is an honor that I am here to address about an industry that I am passionate about. But to tell you the truth, I have never seen the door of an university. We talked about Dr. Chaturvedi, asked me a very simple question when I just walked into the door. He said, I think you have an Indian connection. And I said, let me clarify that for the audience because the name could be misleading. I am an Australian by naturalization, but I am an Indian by the grace of God. I was born here and I love coming back. Today's topic, global supply chain in emerging market, I think is a topic that is most relevant to all of us today. We sit in probably one of the largest economies of the world. It is probably the center of universe for many activities globally that are about to happen. And my discussion today and my topic today is to tell you a little bit about the way that we need to prepare ourselves from a strategic perspective on the supply chains and other aspects of business, as well as to ensure that we as people who are the ones who are going to execute supply chain need to look at the type of mindsets, the type of level of preparedness that we need to have within our organizations to meet the challenges that keep coming. Supply chain is all about strategy. I guess all of you will agree to that. And logistics is the execution of that strategy. So the first session, let me talk a little bit about strategy and then we go back to execution part. Strategy runs on precise predictions. I think we all know that. I wish that every single thing in this room today was planned correctly. Every single thing that is happening outside is planned correctly. If businesses were running on a very good strategic level and everything was predictable, we would not be sitting here looking at various strategy workshops that take place within organizations and on it. To take care of strategic planning and to make sure that there was a level of predictability that could come in, scenario planning started off. And that was started off by Shell and GE. These are the two leading institutions in the world who have actually developed cutting-edge solutions to de-risk their businesses. Certainly, as we always say, certainty is being ended by proliferation of information, knowledge and choice. If you look around yourself, right from the moment you wake up to the time that you go to bed, you are inundated with a level of information that is too hard to digest. The number of channels that are on the TV today, 161 in India today, if I am not mistaken. The number of news stories and the way each of that news story is actually related to the audience is in a different format. You have a number of newspapers, both in media, in print, as well as of course the e-commerce and the e-magazines. And then of course there are a lot of thought leaders and a lot of people who have their own precise way of telling you exactly what this information means. When you have such a lot of information, the first thing that I would like to do is say, how the hell do I switch off this information and start living a peaceful life? The erosion of certainty is accelerated by global events, technological, social and cultural change. So if you look at a classic scenario where every single thing is absolutely predicted to the T, there are things that happen around us that could actually impact the way we plan our strategies and the outcome of those strategies. That is why I always say the world is the upside down. The place we are living in today has been and will be affected and impacted by a lot of global changes. Let me take you through some of the ones that you have seen in your recent life. The rise and fall of the dollar. We all know the impact that this has created, not only on India, but also on the other economies of the world. The natural disasters, the tsunamis, the earthquakes that have taken place and that have disrupted life for all of us. And these disruptions can affect the supply chain. If you look at what happened a couple of years ago when one of the volcanoes erupted in Europe, we had a natural disaster because the flights were not able to fly. And when the flights were not able to fly, none of the materials that were flying from China to the rest of Europe and America were able to reach on time. It affected not only consumer life, it affected our business life. Oil, it's like a yo-yo. For some time it was at $60 a barrel. It went all the way up to $134 a barrel. Today oil dominates 57% of a cost of a transportation. And if this yo-yo continues, there is no way that a transport company or a logistics company could actually come up with a predictable strategy as to how to manage their business. Then of course you have to look at the other forms of natural disasters. Disease, SARS, chicken flu. These are the things that have actually impacted us. If you remember when SARS happened, you were not able to travel because there was so much of rules and regulations that came in to protect people from entering into countries that people decided not to travel. And businesses were actually planning how to de-risk their business because of such calamities such as SARS. And then of course the biggest one of all, we live in it, we breathe it, and we experience it here in India. Terrorism. Terrorism can disrupt life like no one else's business. That is why Afghanistan, Iran, these are the center points which have disrupted the global supply chains because the way it affected one single commodity, that was oil. At all times we like to rely on certainty. Of course, all of us. But of course, one has to remember that it is based on social, intellectual needs, and certainty, of course, will bring in a lot of order. That is why if things are predictable and if strategy could be almost certain to the point of what you have predicted, you would have countries that would have a strong social interdependence upon each other. You would not have the wars, you would not have the trade imbalances, you would not have any level of discomfort when you are trying to deal and plan your business plans. You would not have to move your factories from Taiwan to China and from China to Europe. You would not be manufacturing in the lowest economy in the world. You would probably be living in a very social and very secure environment. But that is not the truth. And that is why certainty is a luxury that you can never have. Society and business appetite for uncertainty is poor. Look at Wall Street. If you could predict what the Wall Street is going to open today, I would probably bet my entire day's salary for that. I don't think so. Any one of us has been able to do that, no matter what kind of business magazines and economic backgrounds we all have. Neither do we know about the certainty of innovations. There are innovations that come in, but they come in at the wrong time. And that leads to a lot of variations in our business life. Risk has multiple outcomes, and some of these have got definite probabilities, but uncertainty has got no probabilities. And I will explain that to you in a few things. If you look at our friend Mr. Columbus, he had no business plan. He started off on a journey, he conquered the world, but there was no strategy planning that his team did. There was nothing else that he did except he took off, set off, and said, I want to discover the world. That was a simple way of doing things. Today, every single institution will tell you that the first thing we need to do is to have a business plan before we can even embark on a journey of business. But then if you look at Dhirubhai Ambani, he started off his business. He had no business plan. If you look at Jeff Bezos or Michael Dell, or for that matter Steve Jobs, did they have a business plan? Did they ever think that they actually wrote down and planned the strategy. They started off from the back of a napkin, and they developed one of the leading innovations of the world, or they are leading institutions of the world today that actually are highly rated and highly regarded. No one visualized what would happen to Europe after World War II. Yet, World War II caused the decline of Europe instead of having Europe being the leading power. So, my friends, what is it that we can do? And this comes back now to how well we need to plan our strategies and how well we need to plan our supply chains and be prepared for the implementation and the execution of these supply chains. The best thing that every single person in this room will tell you is that you have to have the ability to look around the corner. But take a drive on one of these curved roads and you will find that it's not easy for you to take a look around the corner, because you can't. If you try to overtake anyone on that corner, you would probably end up on a head-on collision. So you can't do that. You have to have some methods of looking around the corners. You have to make sure that the information that is around you is sanitized to the point that you could make some level of understanding out of it. And that is why we have a level of analysts who have got jobs and computer softwares that do nothing else but come up with different levels of predictions. The world that is going to change is going to be just in the middle of where we all are sitting. India, China, Asia, Africa. By 2015, the GDPs of these economies are going to be greater than the ones that have been there for the developed nations. The urban population is going to be higher than the rural population. Yet we are still not planning a strategy around how we want to take our supply chain to the rural. It is still very difficult to deliver a single product to a villager who is sitting far apart. And the Unilevers of the world and the Procter Gambles and the Colgates and everyone else is scratching their minds as to how are they going to deliver products to those people who still will be there and be a part of this economy no matter what, because we all need food to eat. We will see a multipolar world. We will still see the USA being the strongest economy no matter what people say, and I will show you why. You will see that China will outpace and outrun Japan in many ways, and of course you will see India coming up very strongly in the second or third position. So, when we talk about economics, let me ask you one simple question. Who do you think is spending all the money? If you looked at 1960, 28% of the world's GDP was spent by the government. Today, 48 to 50% of that GDP is being spent by the governments. So what does it tell us? It tells us that maybe I should and you should be working for the government. It's probably an easier job to have because that's where the money is. How do we work with the governments better? If you want to work for the government, how do you work with the government? But this is not a joke. Actually, the government, and I think it was Professor Lalwani who said this, it is the government that is spending the money and is going to be spending the money for the future of the economies, on infrastructure, on rural growth, on agriculture. And so, of course, how do we work with the governments better? And our Indian friends told me this, and it's a little bit of a joke, but it's true. It says, our economy grows at night. The Indian economy grows at night, specifically because that's when the government is sleeping. New priorities for new money. I'll tell you what is happening around in the world now. In 2011, the US trade deficit was about $1,250 billion. $1,250 billion. It is much more higher today. At the same time, in that year, China had a surplus of $3.2 billion. A surplus. Now, where was that money being parked? China had so much money. What was China doing with that money? Have a look. They were investing that in industrial assets around the world. They were investing that in infrastructure projects both locally and globally. If you look at the China infrastructure, it is world class. If you go to Sri Lanka and if you look at the freeway that has been built there, it is world class and it is built by a Chinese government. They were investing that money in their local companies and local brands. They started creating brands which we have still not done. They started investing money in government bonds which were invested globally. And if you look at one single point, there are 700 Chinese companies now today in Africa. 700 Chinese companies. And many more who want to come into India. The new revolution is about who is spending the money and where. Where the money, as you know, is held in two places. And that is why I said in the beginning, don't forget the US dollar. 67% of the global money has been invested and parked safely in US dollars. Only 27% of that is in euros. The rest, my friends, is in other currencies which we are all trading in. If you take a simple line and draw it on the map of the world, and if you look at the line, anything below that line today is classified as the emerging economies. Am I right? This is where the money is all going. The high-tech manufacturing that is taking place in the southern American countries, the huge industrial and mining projects that are coming up in Africa, and don't forget Africa is the next point of interest, followed by China and India. The raw materials that are being sourced from all over the places. Kimball will tell you that Australia is probably one of the places where a lot of money is coming in, and a lot of Chinese companies and Indian companies are buying into assets to get into the raw materials. The size of the market, that is where the money is being invested. That is why people are interested in Africa, India, China, because of the billions of people that live around here. And of course the brands that I spoke about, the Chinese brands that are coming up. That is where all this money is coming from. And if you look at the emerging global brands, look at them. You have Tata, Suzlon, Wipro, Haier, ZTE. These are the brands that were not there 10 years ago. No one knew them. Today Infosys, Tata, these are the brands that people talk about globally. There are books written about it, case studies coming up. If you look at Haier, which was not heard of 5 years ago, a Haier was known as a low-end product. Today it is the world's largest household appliance company. And it is a very strong brand, let me tell you that. 93 companies of the top Fortune 500 companies are from the emerging markets. 93, 1/5 of the top 500 Fortune 500 companies are from the emerging market. So this is the place where you are all going to be studying, working, and probably wanting to come back. That is why all eyes are on the center of the emerging markets, and that is where we need to be. When we talk about strategies, a lot of people talk about the environment, because they all say environment is the biggest thing, and I wanted to take away a myth, given that we have such a nice, eminent audience here today. I just wanted to talk about how decisions sometimes in institutions are taken because of the impact on the environment. I took a small, I took a study from the University of Wellington, New Zealand, and they did a very, very good study. They actually took a Toyota Land Cruiser 4-wheel drive, and they said it took 0.41 hectares if the car ran about average of 10,000 kilometers, and that would be the impact. So in other words, to fuel that car, you would have about 0.41 hectares of agricultural land that would be required to create that fuel, right? And then they took a simple animal called a dog, small puppy, and then they said, what does the dog and how does the dog impact this environment? And this is a very interesting statistic. 0.84 hectares to make sure that the dog lives a healthy life for 15 years, because in 15 years it is going to consume 164 kilos of meat and 95 kilos of cereals. So the land size that is required to feed that dog, our friends, is going to be higher than the one that is required to fuel the Land Cruiser. That is the way things work. John Kenneth Galbraith, he's of course a world leader on economics, and he said the only function of economic forecasting today is to make astrology predictable and respectable. And he was not wrong. If you look at the center of the screen, you see the euro. Probably the euro is something that was there about a decade ago. But then look at Wikipedia, Facebook, YouTube, iPad, iPhone, Twitter, Yahoo. Do you know these products actually were only there just about 10 years ago. So these are a 10-year-old products. The good news is that most of these products came from none other place than California, because the California, as we all know, is the Silicon Valley where all the innovations come from. The bad news is, of course, California is the only state in the US which is today bankrupt. Detroit was the next one that has just become bankrupt. Yeah. And then the real question for all of us today is what will happen in the next 10 years. For you students, you need to know in 10 years time there might not be a Facebook or a Wikipedia or a Twitter. It could be something totally different. And then are you prepared? Are you thinking what will be the next one? Because I never thought about Facebook. I don't think the eminent professors here ever thought that we would have a Twitter and a Yahoo and a Facebook. I don't remember seeing a fridge when I was a child. I don't remember having a car. So this is what you are having. You are having the new things today, but in years to come, you will see a different things. And 10 years is not a too far a period. Yeah, it is just one generation away. And let me tell you how small this one generation of 10 years could be. Recognize these people that you are about to see. Do you know this guy? Anyone can see? Do you know who this is? Bill Gates. Absolutely right. I don't know what wrong he did. He probably ended up in jail because that's a police number plate in front of him. But that's Bill Gates 10 years ago. These ones? Yeah? The president of US and his wife, Hillary Clinton. Right? Our friend, do you know who this is? Barack Obama, just a few years ago. Yeah, very different from what he is today. Do you know who this is? The young man in a nice dicey suit? Yeah? No? Let me help you. Berlusconi, yeah? The ex-Prime Minister of Italy. All of these guys have changed, except our friend Berlusconi. He is the only guy who still continues on his old habits. Yeah? We have to be very careful about him. But other than that, everyone else has changed. So what about the world today and tomorrow? Ladies and gentlemen, there are only two engines of growth that you need to be thinking about. The emerging middle class. We all talk about it. India has got 300 million people who are today classified as the emerging middle class. And this emerging middle class has got one single thing. They have a lot of money to spend. They are motivated because there is money, and they are motivated because they have a lot more desire to consume. That is why all these malls are coming up. That is why all of you, when you get your pocket money or you get your paycheck, the first thing you do is to go out and buy a nice branded shirt. Yeah? No one today wears goes out and buys a shirt piece and goes to a trailer and gets it stitched. Those days are gone. And these are the middle class people who are owning a fridge, a TV, not one car, two cars, yeah? And all of them are spending money. And then there is the next generation that is there on the horizon that we have not seen and we should be thinking about, and that is the emerging less poor. More than 1 billion people, consumers are going to be there who need to be serviced, because these are the people who will be spending a lot of money, and we as an industry are not prepared. If you look at Negroponte, do you remember Negroponte? About 6-7 years ago he came up with a $100 PC. Remember him? Do you know the mobile money? The one that is invented in no other place but in Africa. They used to transfer money on a mobile phone because you could not go to a bank. There were no ATMs. They came up with this innovation of how to transfer money by using mobile phones. Mr. Ratan Tata, he came up with this brilliant idea. The only mistake he made it, he called it a cheap car. It is a wonderful innovation to come up with a car that could take 4 people comfortably in an air-conditioned environment for $2,500. And of course, don't forget our next door neighbor. They came up with a very good idea in Bangladesh, the microfinance. Right? These are the products that are going to be the future of this world. If you look at what China is doing, 56% of China's exports are going to the emerging market, 56%. Those of who come from a shipping background will remember that the 90% of containers that go to US every year carrying all the products which are made in China, 75% of those come back empty. 75% of those containers come back empty because there is nothing that US produces anymore. So the next business model for all of us is going to be about serving the emerging poor class that is coming up. There are 1.2 billion people who have no safe drinking water. 80% of the diseases in the world come from drinking water, and we don't have safe drinking water for these people. That is why Tata came up with a very simple product called Tata Swachh. Have you seen that product? Yeah? The Tata Swachh purifier requires no battery. It requires no electricity. There is no replacement part to be replaced for 6 months. And you know what is the price? $16. They could invent something which is there for these people to start using. The next business model for the advanced economies, those people that live in Australia and Europe and US, for all of us, is going to be a very different one. It is all about old age. At the age of 65 you retire. Because, thank goodness, because of this pharmaceutical world and the world of medicine and the way we have doctors who come up with ways to save your life, you are still going to be in good shape by the age of 76 and still wanting to do things, play golf, go out, enjoy your life. You could be living up to the age of 80 or 90. If you are going to do that, you are going to be an overachiever. Yeah? And what they are saying is that the life expectancy of every individual here in this room actually increases by 5 hours every day. Now if I were to continue speaking for 1 hour more, I can increase your lifespan, but I think that would be too much, yeah? So, what is happening now and what needs to happen to change the supply chains? First of all, let's go back to what Charles Darwin once said. He said, industry is the keystone of prosperity and the soul of business. What is happening in India today? Where is the industry? What is happening in US and Europe? Where are the industries? The only industrialized nation in Europe is Germany, and I tell you, Germany is doing a damn good thing because they are still keeping their industries to themselves. And we as Indians who actually should have had the industrial revolution took place, we are buying Chinese products. Go into your household, every single thing that you wear, what you use, your plastic buckets, your brushes, your toothpaste, everything comes from China. So where has the industry gone? Why are we not industrialized? But things are changing. And people like GE are leading the change. Europe, America is waking up. Ladies and gentlemen, if we don't wake up in this room, we would be left far behind. Industry has to come back to India, and to do that you have to have the best supply chains. The bottlenecks that we have got in this country are probably the most prohibitive bottlenecks for an industry to grow. This is what is the changing face of manufacturing. Factories that will go back to America already started. and will become a dominant factor in the next 10 years. Europe, a lot of factories that will start relocating. Australia too is not too far. They have the raw materials. Why give away the industry? They will come up with a way to redesign their supply chain cost. In fact, believe it or not, in the US, when they did this experiment, GE did it, they actually told the workers, your average daily wage is about $16. What if we drop it down to about, $7 or $6? But at least we guarantee you one thing, for the next 20 years you will have a job. And you know what the workers said? They said, we would like to have the next 20 years of a job. And we will manage how to live in that $6 a hour. So if they could do that, we need to start thinking. We get high pay packages. Are we ready to work with half the money? Are we inventive enough to start manufacturing here and getting the labor force trained? What is happening this is revolutionary. This is going to change the way manufacturing works. A thing called 3D. All the high-tech components that all the high-tech industry requires are going to go back to the base of use. That means if you want to produce an engine part for Boeing, which is lying around in New Zealand, they are not going to fly it from a low cost country to New Zealand to repair that aircraft. They are going to manufacture it on site. In fact, I am on the board of a company called Genometry. It is a 3D manufacturing company, and this company has actually already started manufacturing two things. One, all the jewelry that you want is being printed today in 3D, and human tissues and human bones are going to come to be printed in 3D. Coming back to the end of it, the new economy is going to be driven by consumers. So watch this. Meet the individual needs of the customers. You have to do that. Every single customer is going to dominate the way your products are produced. You will have to be engaged emotionally with your products and your consumers. Your products cannot be differentiated from the ones that your consumers want. So you need to make sure that your products are personalized. You need to know that there is going to be more and more human interface with your manufacturing. Now if you have a product problem, you are going to pick up the phone and you are going to call the manufacturer and you are going to start complaining about that product. It did not happen about 20 years ago. Consumer courts are back in fashion. There is going to be a lot of fused physical digital worlds. That means Facebooks, Twitters will be used to tell consumers what is happening in real life in the retail world. Be prepared. People will be flying around with messages being talked about on the open platform about the products and the services that you offer. Creativity will be not limited to one person. There will be not one single designer. It will actually create co-creation platforms. You will have a number of designers who can latch on and design the products that you use in your household today. You need to have scalable distribution. Scalable distribution to reach consumers directly. That is why e-commerce is coming up to be the biggest market and the biggest bubble, I would always say, that might explode if we are not very careful. But e-commerce is the platform that people are creating. We don't have the scale to reach to the end consumer. That is why Amazon came up with this drone theory. But that is something that we have to think about. How do you get the product in half an hour's time over there? Yeah? And internet is going to connect. So you go to a supermarket, you can see a small sticker made in Congo, and that banana could actually tell you by scanning that barcode there, the history of that banana, where it came from, how it was, how long it was in storage, and when it actually came up on the shelf. Now the good news for the leaders, all of us are going to be the future leaders. It is good to actually have social networks. That's why what you see is all the leaders are now getting into Twitter and Facebooks and creating their Facebook's account. But be careful, guys, because what is going to happen is the following. What leadership qualities can you demonstrate? It is a simple question that is being asked to a person who goes for an interview. And the guy says, I have 20 people following me on Twitter. That's not leadership. Yeah? That's not leadership. So be careful about how you define leadership. It's not because of the Twitters or the Facebook accounts that you have. You need to liberate your mindsets to expand into the global markets. And the most important thing for all of us in this room, how are we going to compete when the product cost is only going to be $16 or the car is only going to be $2,500? What is it that needs to change? And I'll tell you the 3 things that you need to remember. There is a book of rules that I call it my personal book of rules. The first book, and this is about changing your mindset. How do you do it? Think globally. As Indians, we don't do that. We are still very much driven by our own consumption industry. We don't think globally. We have to start thinking globally. We have to act locally. That we all know. That is why we have this thing called the Jugaad. Yeah? But Jugaad is not innovation. Jugaad is trying to circumvent a problem for a temporary phase. You need to turn Jugaad into innovation. And then of course, if you ever have to panic internally. Don't tell the whole world that things in your company are not going right. Yeah? Our friend Albert Einstein said one thing very clearly. He said, logic will get you from A to B. However, imagination will take you everywhere. So, young children, young students in this room, let me tell you, the first thing that you need to do is, textbooks are important, lectures are important, but use your imagination. It will take you a lot of places. Competing in the new economy, you need to have this mindset of just doing it. You need a lot of confidence, but a confidence is what you have before you understand the problem that is going to be wrong. Yeah, you need to have a confidence after understanding the problem, right? Gentleman called Ralph Goodall, very well-known golfer. From 1937 to 1939, he won 2 US Opens and 1 Masters. He was a brilliant golfer at that time. You know what he did? He started thinking too much. And when he started thinking too much, he started writing a book. The day he wrote a book, he started losing golf. Because he got too detailed. You can't get too detailed. If you are in business, 80% rule. If you are right, go for it. If you fail, you need to know how to fail. And I'll talk about it. The sense of timing is very important. That is why Montaigne once said, it is very wrong to be right before everyone else. But not if it is right, but when it is right. And 2 examples. Laker Airways, launched in August 1978, was the first low-frill airlines in the world. How long did it last? 2 years. And this one here from our friend Steve Jobs. He launched the first PDA called the Newton, again in August 1993. What does it tell you? Never launch a product in August. That's when you will fail. No, jokes apart, but people need to understand when to launch a product and how to launch a product. The impossible is always possible. However, a lot of us around the table, when someone is doing something impossible, have this one single mindset, and they say, it's a Chinese proverb. It says the person who says it cannot be done should never interrupt the person doing it. There are people who always come up with brilliant ideas in companies, sitting in the round table. They come up and say, sir, I have a nice idea. But there are a lot of people around that round table who says, no, you're too young to talk about ideas. Sit down, we know what we are doing. And I think that is wrong. There are people who can do the impossible. Allow those people to try out, experiment and risk it. So, if you want to be successful in business in these economies, 5 things that you need to know. Decide what success and failure will look like before you actually launch anything. Challenge the assumptions, please. This is the most important thing. You have to challenge the assumptions, because once those assumptions are set, everything is set. If you fail, learn to fail fast. Don't drag on. Indian companies have this habit of saying, chalta hai. You forget the chalta hai attitude. You have to know if your product is not going to be successful, take it off the market quickly. You will at least save a lot of things. If you fail, fail cheap and limit the uncertainty. Build a culture that celebrates intelligent failure. How many times in companies that I have worked with where someone has failed, the CEO has actually blasted that person for failing. Instead of saying, don't worry son, go ahead. failure is acceptable. We don't accept failure. We need to accept failure. And of course, we have to learn from that failure. So, this is my last slide, and this is my favorite slide. And because I am a sailor by heart, this is the one that I am going to talk about. This is about a sailor called Jean-Baptiste Charcot. I don't think any of you have heard of Jean-Baptiste Charcot, but he was a very well-known sailor. He was the only guy who actually went to both the poles, the North Pole and the South Pole. And how did he do? How did he go to the North Pole and the South Pole? He took a ship and he called the ship Pourquoi pas. In French it means why not. Remember this word, Pourquoi pas, why not? And I'll tell you why not. Why not? Because it will always trigger imagination. Ask yourself a question when you're sitting in an audience, when you're sitting in a lecture, when someone senior is talking to you, have the guts to say why not. Because by asking that simple question, it will trigger imagination. That is what you need to be successful in this economy. You also need to know why not now. Just not why not will do. Why not now? Why can't I do things now? Why do I have to wait for a written instruction, a memo to come down? Why can't I just do it now? Because if you do it, it will trigger energy. People will be enthusiastic. They will want to do things. And of course, the final thing, why not me? Not many people do that. They all ask why not, but then they look at the next person and say, why not he be the scapegoat? No, you need to know why not me, because that will take it to be your commitment to be successful. But there is a technical thing that I need to clarify before I end today. I'm sorry I took away your time. Unfortunately, the ship Pourquoi, it actually sank. And it took my friend Jean-Baptiste Charcot along with it. But then, that's a small detail. Let us not worry about it. Let us worry about why we don't have people to succeed, and why don't we have people who have the ability to say why not now, why not me. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Kimball Winter, CEO, Logistics Executive. With more than 35 years of executive management experience in the human resources, executive recruitment, supply chain logistics, transport, and FMCG industries, Kim possesses a unique range of skills and experience, delivering best practice management and leadership to a wide variety of organizations. His expertise includes development and execution of talent attraction, acquisition, retention, and business improvement strategies with many international organizations. An MBA from New Zealand, Kim has held senior executive positions within international aviation, logistics, express freight, manufacturing, and IT&T organizations, and is a regular contributor of thought leadership across numerous industry sectors. He is frequently invited as a speaker at international events on business leadership and talent management issues. May I now request Mr. Kimball Winter to please deliver the keynote address.
Well, thanks, Harry, and they did that research in Wellington, New Zealand, but I promise I don't have a 4x4 or a dog. So I'm environmentally friendly. Namaste, everybody, and for those of you who are familiar with New Zealand, tēnā koutou, katoa, haere mai, haere mai, haere mai. It's our native language. Yeah, man, he's in a bit of a hurry. Just got a couple of words to say before we go to that. So I'd like to thank BIMTECH and University of Hull in collaboration with LR Sridhar and Abhijit Chowdhury, my business partners, for arranging this trip. Bit of a special trip for me. My birth name originated through Rudyard Kipling's book Kim in 1955, and this is my first visit to India, so it's been a very special trip overnight to reach here. It's my pleasure to share today some of my personal perspectives with you on some of the key issues and challenges and opportunities across the contemporary supply chain and logistics landscape. Within the context, of course, of this pivotal and dynamic time for emerging markets and the players involved. Having travelled through 13 border crossings in emerging market countries and five countries in the last 6 days, it's great to spend a couple of days in the same place, and especially in the eminent company of the thought leaders that we have here and the practitioners that we have here today. Now, we've had a few words spoken already, and just before I spend, say, 15 minutes or so with you to share some of my perspectives, I just thought we might wake everybody up a little bit, and nobody's had a coffee yet in the interim of these speeches. So without ado, I'm going to offer you a greeting from my native New Zealand, even though I'm a resident of Australia and of Dubai these days. I thought we'd just offer you something from New Zealand.
Fantastic tonight, a light breeze heading from right to left as you look at the screen. France will have...
Okay, so we may not have a very good cricket team in New Zealand, although we have won a few tests over here on the odd occasion, maybe once in 100 years. However, we could have the lights back up now, thanks. And but that is the New Zealand rugby team, and that is the haka. The New Zealand rugby team is actually the world champions of rugby for the last 10 years. So we do have something up our sleeves. From my perspective, I must say that when I began considering some of the issues and challenges and opportunities across today's contemporary supply chain and logistics landscape in the context of emerging markets, I didn't really have to look too far for evidence of trends and the facts that surround us every day in this current environment. It seems every time I picked up a random publication on my 14 border crossings over the last 6 days, there was something I was trying to find something to relax, so I picked up random publications, and every time I did so, I found something about emerging markets. So coming up with what I've come up with today is very contemporary, and much of it from the last 72 hours. Having established an international business providing executive search, recruitment and education and coaching to supply chain logistics organisations in 1999, we've seen a massive shift in the momentum from mature to emerging markets over the last 10 years. The slide that you can see there is we started our business, as it happens, in 99 in Sydney and Melbourne. We progressed by those dates there. I won't go into the details, but when I started the business, 80% of our business was in mature, so-called mature markets, although many of the countries don't act too maturely in a lot of those regions these days. But as you can see, by 2013 and opening in those different regions, especially our latest 3 offices being here in India over the last 12 months, 80% of our business is now in the emerging markets. And I think that that's reasonably true to be said of most of the corporate advisory companies in the human resources space, and many of the organisations in the executive search space, which we populate as well. So this shift in emphasis in this month's Harvard Business Review came through actually when I just picked it up a couple of days ago, and I think I might have picked it. Oh, no, I've got it here. Don't worry, I'm not going to read all of these magazines to you, but it just occurred to me there was some really poignant stuff coming out which just bears down on just how important emerging markets are and what the key trends within these markets are. Ramchandran, Manikandan and Pant published in the Harvard Business Review I picked up a couple of days ago that conglomerates are thriving in emerging markets, whereby they started to decline significantly in the Western world. Conglomerates, as most of you will realise, are organisations that have a central power base with many differentiated types of organisations. And these three gentlemen, hope they're not here today because I might misquote them, but the authors studied Indian business groups over 5 years. And what they found was that the emerging market conglomerates have been able to succeed where mature market conglomerates have started to fail, and significantly so. The emerging market conglomerates coordinate and work with and unite inspired affiliate employees. They help affiliates spot and seize opportunities, share resources, talent, and collaborate on strategic activities in a way that wasn't being done before, and that includes, of course, the industry that we all populate across supply chain and indeed the execution piece of logistics. Sorry, the jet lag is getting to me after those 6 days of travel. Reading the Macau, reading the Macau morning paper when I was on the ferry 48 hours ago, the headline story again was all about emerging markets and some of the dynamics that are taking place. In Macau, they are undertaking considerable growth right through their manufacturing, mainly apparel, which was a surprise to me, I wasn't aware of that, but also through the hospitality industry in casinos and what have you. Their growth is grinding to a bit of a halt, not exactly a halt, but a decline in growth, mainly around talent shortage. So again, they've got rapid growth going on. They're not able to find the talent to bring into much of the private sector, but also the public sector. And government is suffering there as well. While flying from Dubai last night, the Australian newspaper had the headline that there was lower expected growth being detected in the third quarter in Australia, and that the government was now uncapping government debt ceilings to try and kickstart activity. One thing that Australia has got going for it, however, is the fact that there's a solid education sector, and I acknowledge our RMIT colleagues here today, and the fact that we have, for some considerable period, had a reasonably mature education sector, fairly closely aligned with industry, seems to be having a solid stanchioning effect against what is now an end of a resources boom to some degree over the last few years, and a lessening of growth that was expected in Australia. So the challenges faced by the mature markets in the US and European economies are well documented. We could spend all day talking about that, and I'm sure many of you have been involved in engagement about those issues. The power shift from mature or more advanced markets to the emerging markets, signified somewhat by the G20 taking centre stage over and above these days the G8. This is led by corporations from emerging economies, as Harry said, something in the order of about 95 slots. Although I had a different number here, Harry, but we'll use yours. Of the Fortune 500 in 2013, up from a paltry 13 or 14 companies in 2001 of the top 500. So we truly are at a pivotal time, right across the whole supply chain and logistics space, which, depending on who you listen to and how you want to measure it, I think we all might agree it's somewhere between about 17 and 21% of an entire economy includes supply chain logistics. Again, pivotal time. Yesterday, CNN broke, late last night actually, CNN broke the news at the hotel I'm staying at here in Delhi that the yuan has overtaken the yen and the euro as the world trade finance. That is significant. There's another whole red wine conversation about whether it'll overtake the US dollar, but not for today. African economies, as we know, are in rapid growth. The fastest growth of any economic region is currently Africa. I think on around about 4.9% average across the continent. And again, yes, you guys are quite right who mentioned it. China is right in amongst Africa and sees the opportunity there. Has moved approximately 30 years ahead of the Americans into Africa. I think the Americans have just woken up to that fact recently. And here we are right on the edge of the Manasseh region. 2 billion people in the Manasseh region, right up into the stars, North Africa, the Middle East, and through India. What an awesome space to be in. What a great time to be in this space. So the shift is there for all to see. But what are the drivers and trends powering supply chain and logistics environments participants today and tomorrow? One of the most interesting developments for me, from a strategic and operational perspective, servicing the companies that I do around the world with my organisation, is strategic because it's a growing megatrend, and operational because of that relationship I have with many companies, is the emergence of market expansion services, or MES players. I don't know, it may be a little bit early in the day for humour, but for those of you who get sick of hearing a constant stream of acronyms, you may wish to join ACRA, and that is the Australian Council for the Removal of Acronyms. Okay, so we'll just have this one up here. So this slide here, and I think you can see it reasonably well here, thanks to our IT gurus here today, is something that I pulled just a week or so ago from a publication by one of my clients, DKSH, and conducted research on their behalf by Roland Berger, a global research house. And if everybody wants a copy of this, it's available on there. As you can see, the top left ratio of revenues between the top 10 global developed and top 10 emerging Asian companies has shifted significantly between 2007 and 12, with growth being now 22% in 2012 for developing versus 6% of the developed companies. So this is the top 10 companies in each of those different economic groups. That is substantial growth. You can also see on the left the market growth status. When I say left, I'll just point this out. So just in here, okay, if you look down here, from 1980 at 4.6 trillion, or you might not be able to see it there, but 12% in 1980 to 17.7 trillion, or 33% in terms of GDP in 2012, coming from emerging markets. So there is no debate. We can quantify what the emerging market stats are and the importance of a somewhat talent short and under pressure supply chain and logistics space trying to deal with that growth, and in many cases driving that growth. We can see the opportunities being created by and for supply chain and logistics players in emerging markets, but we also know the road to success can be hazardous, with multiple challenges and threats, just a little bit like the drive-in from the airport last night. The role of infrastructure is central to this phenomenal growth. How the Asian tigers and China handle this growth has been a lesson for many other regions. And Africa is now engaging with in a very big way over the last 5 to 6 years in particular where I spend a lot of time in East Africa, where I run a fairly large humanitarian organisation. Most of the infrastructure in Africa is being created by Chinese concerns. The growth of international trade and the role played by shipping, transportation and trade as enablers, such as economic free zones, is pivotal and essential for growth and expansion. As a Dubai legal resident over recent years and one of a small team of CEOs contracted to the Dubai government to provide international representation and develop business for JAFSA, Jebel Ali Free Zone, the world's largest logistics and supply chain free zone. I'm sure many of you have been there or have interests there. It's been staggering to see how a dedicated logistics environment, 20 square kilometres roughly, 6,900 businesses, 32% of Dubai's GDP, can operate so well when the central government and all national and local government arms are aligned and committed to total alignment with the facilitation of all factors required for zone customers, the free zone customers. Now, obviously, every country that we see within the emerging markets and in fact the mature markets doesn't necessarily get free zones right, and I know there's been some failed free zones in this region over recent years. So not everybody gets it right, so we need to be careful when developing the dynamics. And I know there's many challenges here. I may not have been to this country before, but I've certainly researched a lot and heard a lot spoken about it. And I understand one of the challenges here, of course, is the challenge of the dynamics between various governments in the regions here. So as Dubai has always had a philosophy of build it and they will come. This type of investment thinking is a lot easier said than done, but you have to hand it to Dubai. They've pitched billions of dollars into their Expo 2020 bid. I was fortunate to be in government circles last week when they announced the win. We're talking a win which will drive incremental growth in the GDP over the next 6 years to 2020. We'll create 227,000 jobs. We'll create 25 million visitors and of a $35 billion investment. They're expecting ongoing return of about 45 billion back from there. They intend to wipe out the entire national debt of $22.5 billion just on the back of Expo 2020 alone. The logistics requirement for that activity will encompass the entire Manasseh region, including India, naturally, and spread all the way down into Africa. So this is a major pivotal change. It's a major event in the emerging market of this region, and I see enormous opportunities for India in particular as a result of that. And if you look at some of the dynamics around India's involvement with the Middle East, when I set up our business there 10 years ago, a pretty good estimate by my team, some of whom are still with us and others who have joined, was that Indian nationals in the executive level in the supply chain about 10 years ago were at somewhere between 10 and 20%. Indian nationals now account for somewhere between 65 and 70% of the executives that we would deal with on a daily basis, and we have something like 480 clients in the UAE alone. So well done, India. There's been an enormous talent exchange out of this particular part of the region and into Dubai, where the market has developed. I had a couple other pieces here that I just wanted to share, just harking back to the market extension services, which is a major trend. When I first looked at it, I hadn't heard the term very much at all. I've researched it with DKSH, and market extension services are going to be a mega trend. As I said, another acronym, but the reality is that market extension services offer enormous opportunity for growth markets and growth companies. They are specialists, if you like, they're 3PLs on steroids. There's a number of them operating in this market. There's a number of them who we are learning how to work with and how to partner with in Asia. Companies like Li & Fung, who may be familiar to some of you, who manage many of the world's luxury apparel and accessory brands, are a classic example of this sort of organisation of an MES. I met with the CEO about 100 hours ago now, and in Hong Kong. And the example there is that they started off, a few of you are nodding, as 3PL operators, maybe the warehousing, maybe the transport. They went from the warehousing and the transport. They decided they needed to go upstream supply chain. They needed to take control of that because then they could ensure the quality of what they were doing. So they've stretched all the way up into the manufacturing leg, primary freight, and actually a lot of the manufacturing operations. About the same time, they decided this extended supply chain, and I don't want to speak for Joseph Fee, who's a good friend of mine and the global CEO, but in my parlance, Australian lingo, they decided they would own the downstream as well. So wherever you go in Asia, you'll see many of the top brands that a lot of you ladies will enjoy buying handbags from, I'm sure, or fine clothing, shoes and dresses. The stores are actually owned by Liam Fong as well. They are enormous in what they are doing. They're not the only ones. There's a whole number of organisations who are doing this. DKSH is another one, and the phrase that you will hear continuously now is the MESs. So, I won't show you that just yet because I just want to throw something at the end. So, throughout developing and so the challenge for us, as I see it, as theorists, as practitioners, as operators, as academics today, is that we really must strive. If we want to take advantage of this time and place where emerging markets are, depending on where you are on the emerging market scene, and I think the graph of the line was a remarkable graph and showed where the emerging markets are. It is all about really maximising the opportunities we've got right now. And to do that, we must strive for smarter, innovative ways to retain the talent that we have in our industry, and do a much better job of attracting and acquiring, developing and engaging with around the things that are motivating the millennials and whatever the next generation is going to be called. Gender equality is a major issue for our industry, both in this country and everywhere else. We don't do a good enough job of encouraging young women into our industries, and we must do better. We've got to get on the front foot on training and development. It's essential in the logistics and supply chain ecosystem, and if we're to flourish as a sector, we need to optimise these opportunities. In closing, recent research by Gartner shows that managing and developing talent is absolutely, sadly, last on the indices of performance and importance for logistics and supply chain companies that they recently researched globally. That is not good enough. Of all the other factors, managing talent, the lifeblood of tomorrow's supply chains in the emerging markets, is unacceptable. Our own global annual research now shows, after 7 years, that we have, which goes out to 5,000 people, that there is a massive gap between the level of training and skills and development sought by middle and senior level executives to that which is offered by the market and by employers. So from my point of view, the challenge is simple. You saw the Maori haka up there before. It's a challenge to do battle. It's been carried into the modern day. I put the challenge out today and for the presentations running over tomorrow as well. Ladies and gentlemen, we must do better. The intellectual capital that's in this building today is enormous. The representation from around the world is fantastic. I congratulate everybody for coming here. I thank again our sponsors and our supporters for having me here today. And I put the challenge out there to collaborate, enjoy the next day or so, and let's think about new ways of making things better in the emerging markets and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It has indeed been a delightful experience listening to such eminent panelists here today. This has been a great beginning, and I'm sure all of you are eagerly looking forward to all that this conference has in store for us. As a token of our gratitude to the stalwarts on the dais, I request Dr. H. Chaturvedi and Dr. C.S. Lalwani to please present mementos to our honoured guests, Mr. Harry Lagarde and Mr. Kimball Winter. I request Dr. Lalwani to please present the memento to Mr. Kimball Winter. As a token of our appreciation for the significant role played by the conference mentor, I request Dr. Chaturvedi to please felicitate Dr. C.S. Lalwani. Thank you, sir. May I now request the conference co-chair, Professor Rajiv Sharma, to kindly propose the formal vote of thanks.
Thank you, Mansi. Very good morning to all of you. It is my privilege to propose the vote of thanks for the first conference, International Conference of BIMTECH, Hull University, Initiative on Supply Chain Logistic Management, commencing today. At the outset, I would like to express my profound gratitude to Dr. Chandra S. Lalwani for sparing his valuable time for his role as our mentor throughout the conference. We are indeed extremely grateful to our director, Dr. H. Chaturvedi, for his constant and meticulous guidance and in making this conference happen in India and also inspiring us to host it successfully. We convey our sincere thanks to Mr. Harry Lagarde, Mr. Kimball Winter, for their gracious presence today. Thank you, sir. I thank all the delegates, students from India and abroad for their kind presence today. Our special thanks to all our partners, logistic executives, Skill Cubes, Logistic Times, the other two are TBI and Livecast events, for helping us in organizing this first conference in India. These events would not be even possible without their constant support. Lastly, I thank all the members from Advisory Committee, all my colleagues who have been involved in this particular exercise for last several months. With their cooperation, full support, this conference would not have been possible. I want to name few people: Mr. Abhijit Chaudhary, Mr. Ritvik Sinha, Mr. Ramesh Krishnan, and Dr. Rahul Singh for their special support to us. Thank you all once again. We have looked forward to an extremely productive 2 days discussion. Thank you all.
That brings us to the end of this session. I now take the privilege of inviting all the dignitaries on the dais, participants, guests, colleagues and students for tea outside. The technical sessions will begin shortly and simultaneously in Jacaranda 1 and 2. So please be back by 12 noon. Thank you.
वहाँ से मैं कर रहा हूँ 3 घंटे ये सिर्फ तार निकलने में एक्सएलआर निकल पार्टीशन काफी हो उस समय बोल पर वो लगा दिया ये लगा दिया ये तो फिक्स पार्टीशन ये आएगा